The United States is pouring billions into domestic rare earth mining, selling the public an illusion of total technological independence. We are digging our own salvation out of the dirt, but raw ore is mathematically useless without advanced chemical processing. Every ounce of critical material pulled from North American soil is immediately loaded onto cargo ships and sent straight across the Pacific. Beijing neutralized billions in Western mining investments overnight. They control over 90% of global refining capability. We are trapped in an invisible processing loop we cannot dig our way out of. Welcome to the midstream monopoly. In the 1990s, the West willingly outsourced the highly toxic, chemically complex process of rare earth separation to avoid severe environmental and economic liabilities. That strategic miscalculation handed Beijing absolute dominance. They did not just build industrial refineries, they engineered an impenetrable fortress of industrial chemical patents required to isolate these critical elements. The intellectual property stack for converting raw minerals into high-grade magnets is entirely owned by Chinese state-backed conglomerates. You can mine the ore, but you cannot legally refine it. Over 3 decades, they executed a methodical acquisition of global processing rights. This engineered vulnerability birthed the traces-only patent trap, leveraging absolute ownership of underlying processing technology against Western manufacturing sectors. If a Western nation refines its own domestic materials using Chinese patented chemical processes or proprietary machinery, Beijing can legally sever the supply chain. The intellectual property block is absolute. By weaponizing these export controls, Beijing dictates the survival of foreign industry. Any foreign magnet containing trace elements processed with their intellectual property is instantly subjected to hostile licensing restrictions. The macroeconomic result was entirely devastating. A catastrophic 74% year-on-year collapse in magnet shipments brought Western automotive assembly lines to a sudden, grinding halt. Panic triggered a rapid counter-strategy. Washington initiated the Forum on Resource Geostrategic Engagement, forging a critical minerals action plan with Mexico to reconstruct a localized, heavily fortified supply chain. To break Beijing's market-dumping capabilities, the administration proposed an artificial intelligence-driven pricing framework. This mechanism attempts to artificially stabilize volatile mineral markets, shielding nascent Western processing infrastructure from predatory pricing. But the macroeconomic reality is already written. The era of the free market resource trade is officially dead. Global supply chains are fracturing into rigid, highly subsidized, adversarial geopolitical blocks for the end consumer. This transition guarantees permanent structural inflation. The cost of everything from electric vehicles to advanced defense hardware is now dictated by state-managed pricing protocols. Politics, not geology, now determines the ultimate cost of technological survival. The invisible rare earth gate has slammed shut, and the West is standing on the wrong side. To comprehend this paralysis, we must examine the chemistry. Rare earth separation requires thousands of highly toxic solvent extraction stages. The environmental toll is historically devastating and politically toxic. Facing severe domestic backlash in the late 20th century, Western administrators made a fatal calculation. They outsourced the entire midstream processing sector to specialized industrial zones in eastern China. It was framed as an economic victory. We exported the ecological devastation and imported cheap, finished magnets. But this short-term logistical convenience masked a catastrophic transfer of technological sovereignty. Beijing absorbed this hazardous industry, heavily subsidizing the chemical engineering required to master it. They mapped out a multi-decade strategy to monopolize the global refinement choke point without firing a shot. They systematically patented every viable metallurgical process. By filing thousands of proprietary industrial patents, state-backed conglomerates erected an impenetrable legal fortress around the conversion of raw dirt into strategic power. This brings us to the ultimate strategic snare, the traces-only patent trap. Beijing realized that controlling the final product was unnecessary if they controlled the proprietary chemistry inside it. Western facilities can mine their own neodymium, but converting that ore into a specialized permanent magnet requires specific chemical signatures. Those exact chemical signatures are strictly owned by Chinese entities. Through updated export control mandates, Beijing declared that any foreign manufacturing utilizing these patented trace processes is subject to immediate regulatory review. The supply chain is completely legally compromised. The legal mechanism is flawlessly executed. A single Chinese patent violation in the midstream chemical processing phase grants Beijing the absolute authority to embargo the finished product indefinitely. When the export restrictions were activated, global markets hemorrhaged. Magnet shipments to Western industrial sectors experienced a catastrophic 74% year-on-year collapse, paralyzing advanced manufacturing. Automotive conglomerates watched assembly lines grind to a devastating halt. Without high-grade permanent magnets, the production of electric vehicle motors and critical drivetrain components became mathematically impossible overnight. The crisis immediately infected the defense industrial base. The precision guidance systems of fifth-generation fighter jets rely entirely on these exact same embargoed magnetic components to maintain operational superiority. Washington panicked. The illusion of a self-correcting free market was shattered. To prevent total industrial collapse, they initiated the Forum on Resource Geostrategic Engagement, known as the Forge Alliance. This consortium represents a desperate shift towards state-managed capitalism. Federal agencies are now directly coordinating with allied mining conglomerates to rapidly reconstruct a heavily fortified, localized supply chain architecture. The cornerstone of this strategy is the U.S.-Mexico Critical Minerals Action Plan. It envisions a closed-loop North American supply corridor, theoretically immune to trans-Pacific logistical blockades and hostile embargoes. But building refineries takes a decade. To survive the interim, administrators proposed a radical artificial intelligence-driven pricing framework designed to mathematically counter Beijing's aggressive market dumping and predatory pricing tactics. By utilizing predictive algorithms, this framework attempts to artificially stabilize volatile mineral valuations. It acts as a financial shield, protecting nascent Western processing infrastructure from being bankrupted by foreign subsidies. We are witnessing the death of free market resource allocation. Domestic localization capacity is being violently decoupled from foreign reality, creating a split paradigm where security completely overrides economic efficiency. The financial requirement is staggering. Hundreds of billions in federal subsidies are required just to maintain baseline operational viability for these new extraction and processing facilities across the continent. As one defense logistics official stated, "We are no longer buying minerals. We are buying geopolitical insurance policies. The premium on that insurance is about to fundamentally alter our economy." This leads to the macro payoff. The geopolitical restructuring of critical minerals guarantees a permanent paradigm shift. The era of cheap, borderless technological manufacturing is officially and permanently over. Supply chains are fracturing into rigid, highly subsidized adversarial blocks. The transition away from globalized efficiency toward localized security protocols forces a complete recalculation of basic industrial input costs. Topographical divides now represent insurmountable economic barriers. Trade routes that once flowed freely across the Pacific are being replaced by fragmented, heavily guarded regional networks dictated by diplomatic alliances. For the end consumer, this transition guarantees a brutal reality: permanent structural inflation. The underlying cost of technological advancement is now inextricably linked to the cost of national security. When you artificially restrict a supply chain and replace optimized global refineries with subsidized domestic alternatives, the cost per minute metric ton of processed material skyrockets exponentially across the board. State-owned firms and global banking systems are already pricing in this friction. The foundational architecture of modern technology is transitioning to a heavily regulated, state-managed pricing structure without exception. The cost of everything from consumer electronics to advanced defense hardware will reflect this geopolitical premium. We are paying the price for 3 decades of strategic complacency and outsourced industrial capacity. The illusion of independence has completely collapsed. We believed that controlling the dirt meant controlling the destiny. But geology is meaningless without the proprietary chemistry required to actually refine it. The industrial refinery complexes that dominate the midstream sector remain cloaked in shadows, operating thousands of miles away. They hold the true leverage in the 21st century resource war. Every diplomatic player, every trade network flowchart, and every strategic vulnerability marker points to the exact same choke point. The West is entirely captured within an invisible, legally enforced processing loop. Politics, not geology, will dictate the cost of our technological future. The invisible rare earth gate has slammed shut. We are locked out of our own supply chains indefinitely until we master the chemistry, rewrite the patents, and rebuild the midstream monopoly. The trillions spent on domestic extraction will remain nothing more than highly expensive theater. Command out! The patent trap was merely the opening salvo. Welcome to the era of deep escalation. Beijing has systematically activated retaliation protocols across the broader advanced manufacturing ecosystem. The semiconductor war provided the perfect catalyst. When Washington restricted high-end silicon exports, the East responded by weaponizing gallium and germanium, the foundational elements of modern microelectronics. With a staggering 80% monopoly on global gallium production, This export ban bypassed Western silicon restrictions entirely. They targeted the raw elemental inputs required to fabricate the chips. A severe structural vulnerability was exposed. The West commands the intellectual property for advanced semiconductor design, but the East holds absolute leverage over the physical metallurgy required to build them. Without these specific trace metals, multi-billion-dollar fabrication plants become completely useless. Radar systems, fiber optics, and advanced power grids face immediate, critical supply chain paralysis. Intelligence dossiers confirm this is a calculated, asymmetrical counterstrike. By placing licensing requirements on these obscure metals, Beijing successfully established a reciprocal choke point against Western tech embargoes. The Ministry of Commerce declared these restrictions necessary for national security. It was a precise, mirror diplomatic warning. Weaponize your semiconductor designs, and we will starve your elemental supply lines. Global tech indices absorbed the shock instantly. Defense contractors and aerospace conglomerates watched forward-looking production estimates crash, realizing their supply chains were held hostage by foreign metallurgical export quotas. This strategy did not stop at microchips. The timeline of export controls rapidly expanded, targeting spherical graphite, the irreplaceable anode material utilized in nearly every electric vehicle battery on Earth. Declassified Pentagon logistics. Memos reveal a terrifying reality. The transition to green energy and electrified armor divisions is entirely dependent on a mineral supply chain controlled by a strategic adversary. Western automotive heavyweights suddenly found themselves at the mercy of state-owned battery conglomerates. These foreign entities dictate who receives the critical materials needed to keep assembly lines operational. Controlling over 90% of global graphite refining, Beijing can artificially constrain market supply at will. This choke point effectively dictates the production ceiling for the entire Western electric vehicle industry. To circumvent this metallurgical blockade, the West initiated the New Scramble, a desperate, heavily subsidized geopolitical race to secure untapped mineral deposits across the global South and African continent. Satellite telemetry tracks billions of dollars flowing into sub-Saharan Africa and South America. Western consortiums are frantically mapping alternative lithium, cobalt, and copper veins to break the existing monopoly. Deep inside these remote logistical frontiers, massive extraction projects are breaking ground. But Western mining operations are bound by stringent environmental, social, and governance regulations that drastically slow deployment. A brutal operational mismatch emerges. Western firms navigate years of bureaucratic environmental audits, while Chinese state-backed enterprises deploy unrestricted capital, rapidly acquiring and operationalizing foreign mines in record time. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing has systematically locked down future mineral rights. They trade massive infrastructure projects for exclusive, multi-decade extraction contracts, legally boxing out Western competitors. Sovereign debt contracts reveal the true cost of these agreements. Developing nations pledge their unmined geological wealth as collateral, ensuring that the raw materials flow exclusively toward Eastern refineries. To transport this captured wealth, massive deep-water port facilities are rising from the shadows along the African coast. These logistical hubs are purpose-built to bypass traditional Western maritime choke points. Over the last 15 years, a relentless timeline of port acquisitions has quietly reshaped global shipping lanes. This creates a closed-loop logistical network immune to traditional naval blockade strategies. The Strait of Malacca remains the ultimate vulnerability. If geopolitical tensions escalate, Allied naval forces could theoretically sever the energy and mineral shipments fueling the Eastern industrial processing machine. Naval intelligence explicitly recognizes this maritime friction. Whoever controls the physical shipping lanes ultimately controls the global economy. The new infrastructure projects are designed to entirely neutralize this strategic threat. Simulated naval blockade models demonstrate a frightening reality. A disruption in these critical sea lanes would trigger an immediate, catastrophic collapse of the global high-tech manufacturing sector within weeks. Yet, even if the West secures the raw dirt and protects the shipping lanes, they face an insurmountable domestic barrier. Welcome to the catastrophic engineering and industrial talent deficit. The numbers are fundamentally broken. China graduates vastly more STEM professionals annually than the United States. We lack the specialized human capital required to physically rebuild the midstream processing sector. University pipelines and state research laboratories in the East are hyper-focused on applied metallurgy and chemical engineering. Western institutions have largely abandoned these heavy industrial disciplines for software and finance. Wall Street prioritizes digital financial engineering, while Beijing executes physical industrial engineering. This cultural divergence has hollowed out the exact technical workforce required to achieve genuine supply chain independence. Strategic vulnerability assessments highlight this missing midstream human capital. You cannot run a highly toxic, complex rare earth solvent extraction facility without decades of specialized, hands-on chemical engineering experience. Visa restrictions and technology transfer bans have isolated the labor pools. The West is attempting to construct advanced metallurgical refineries without access to the only engineers who know how they work. The result is a landscape of unfinished factories and empty laboratories. Billions in federal subsidies sit idle because project managers simply cannot recruit the specialized technicians required to operate them. Massive cost overruns are destroying localized manufacturing initiatives. High-profile semiconductor and refinery projects face severe delays, bleeding capital as they struggle to import foreign talent to salvage the construction timelines. Corporate executives are sounding the alarm. They possess the capital and the political mandate, but the absolute absence of a trained industrial workforce makes execution a mathematical and logistical impossibility. This industrial paralysis leads to the final theater of structural conflict: the financial weaponization of the supply chain. A systemic attempt to dethrone the United States dollar as the reserve currency. The BRICS alliance is rapidly expanding its geopolitical footprint. By integrating rich nations into a unified economic bloc, they are actively constructing an alternative financial architecture immune to Western sanctions. Alternative payment systems are being deployed to bypass the SWIFT network. This financial infrastructure allows state-owned enterprises to trade critical minerals and energy assets without touching the American banking system. De-dollarization metrics are accelerating. Central banks across the global south are aggressively dumping treasury bonds and hoarding physical gold reserves at a pace not seen since the Second World War. A fundamental ideological split is occurring. The West operates on a fiat currency foundation, while the emergent Eastern Bloc is pivoting toward a commodity-backed trade system anchored by physical resources. The timeline of gold accumulation perfectly mirrors the escalation of export controls. They are stockpiling monetary armor, preparing for a protracted economic siege where physical commodities dictate sovereign financial survival. Intelligence boards track the rise of new commodity pricing mechanisms. If critical minerals and energy are priced outside the dollar ecosystem, Washington loses its primary tool for global economic enforcement. Bilateral trade agreements are now routinely settled in local currencies. These stamped contracts represent a direct assault on the financial hegemony that has sustained Western economic dominance for 80 years. Deep inside, sovereign central bank vaults, massive pallets of gold bullion are replacing digital treasury reserves. The ultimate hedge against a weaponized dollar is physical, undeniable, and entirely sanction-proof wealth. As the dollar hegemony slowly erodes, bond yields face unprecedented volatility. The cost of financing Western industrial localization projects spirals out of control as foreign appetite for sovereign debt evaporates. The weaponization of the dollar forced their hand. By leveraging financial sanctions, the West inadvertently accelerated the creation of an entirely parallel global economy built on tangible metallurgical and energy assets. A new global trade network is glowing online. These emerging nodes bypass traditional financial choke points, creating a closed, self-sustaining loop of resource extraction, industrial processing, and secure capital settlement. We are witnessing the descent of a new iron curtain of trade, a permanent geopolitical fracture dividing the world into two distinct, highly militarized, and economically incompatible supply chain ecosystems. The total global gross domestic product is splitting. As the critical mineral war escalates, the foundational architecture of international commerce is being rewritten in real time. The trap is closing. We have reached the macro payoff, the intersection where geopolitical theory violently collides with consumer reality. The illusion of a self-correcting free market has completely evaporated. Western governments are trapped in a brutal paradox. They must either subsidize domestic production at mathematically unsustainable levels or completely surrender their technological sovereignty to a strategic adversary. The numbers are unforgiving. Attempting to replicate the entire midstream processing sector domestically requires trillions in localized capital expenditure. It is an economic burden the system cannot bear. Beneath the political rhetoric, defense contractors are quietly panicking. The next generation of hypersonic missiles and autonomous drone swarms are entirely dependent on these embargoed magnetic alloys. Classified procurement documents reveal a terrified defense industrial base. Supply chain auditors have discovered that critical components for nuclear submarines still rely on trace minerals processed in eastern refineries. One defense official anonymously admitted the terrifying truth. We cannot fight a protracted war against the exact same nation that manufactures the basic components of our weapon systems. The vulnerability spans the entire globe. From the Pacific theater to the European plains, Allied military architecture is built upon a supply chain foundation that can be severed instantly. When we project this trajectory over the next decade, the outcome is stark. The technological edge that defined Western military supremacy is being methodically dismantled, patent by patent. Intelligence analysts map a chilling scenario. By throttling the export of refined rare earths, Beijing can effectively ground fifth-generation fighter fleets without ever launching a single kinetic strike. The shadow of this monopoly extends far beyond the battlefield. It strikes at the very heart of the modern civilian economy, threatening the foundational infrastructure of the digital age. Silicon Valley tech giants are realizing their vulnerability. The massive artificial intelligence data centers driving the future economy require immense cooling systems and transformers built with these exact elements. As supply constraints tighten, the hardware costs for artificial intelligence infrastructure are exploding. Tech indices face severe downward pressure as investors realize the physical limitations of digital growth. The era of the peace dividend is officially dead. The globalized system that delivered cheap consumer electronics and affordable electric vehicles has been permanently fractured by geopolitical reality. We are transitioning from a world of abundance to a localized world of extreme scarcity. Efficiency has been violently replaced by the absolute necessity of national security protocols. This brings us to the ultimate economic consequence. The restructuring of global critical mineral supply chains guarantees a brutal, unavoidable era of permanent structural inflation for the consumer. The cost of living is now inextricably linked to the cost of geopolitical defense. Sovereign debt yields will skyrocket as nations desperately print capital to fund their localized industrial bases. This is the sovereign pricing paradigm. Politics, not geology, dictates the cost of survival. The state must now artificially manage the price of technology to prevent total industrial collapse. The Forge Alliance and the AI-driven pricing frameworks are desperate countermeasures. They are attempting to build an economic fortress to shield domestic markets from predatory foreign dumping tactics. But building this fortress requires walling off the North American corridor. It means abandoning the global free market and retreating into heavily subsidized, strictly regulated regional trade blocs. Behind these walls, the standard of living must mathematically decline. When you replace hyper-efficient global refineries with expensive localized alternatives, the end consumer ultimately absorbs the massive penalty. Every electric vehicle, every smartphone, and every automated factory will carry this invisible geopolitical tax. The baseline cost of technological civilization is being permanently repriced upward by state mandate. Historical economic data proves that autarky is fiercely expensive. Attempting absolute self-sufficiency in critical minerals will drain national treasuries, forcing brutal austerity measures across other critical domestic sectors. The invisible rare earth gate has slammed shut. We are locked out of the very supply chains we designed, trapped by our own environmental policies and corporate short-termism. 3 decades of strategic complacency cannot be undone in a single election cycle. The timeline to rebuild the midstream processing monopoly is measured in generations, not financial quarters. We traded our industrial sovereignty for cheap consumer goods. Now, the bill has arrived, and the currency demanded is our geopolitical leverage and our future technological independence. The massive Chinese refineries remain cloaked in the shadows, operating at a scale the West cannot currently comprehend, let alone replicate. They hold the ultimate high ground. The final climactic revelation is terrifying. True technological independence is a myth. To achieve it, the Western consumer must accept a fundamentally lower standard of living. We have entered the strategic outro. The illusion of the Mountain Pass mine has been entirely shattered. Digging raw dirt out of the ground is only the beginning. The intellectual property stack, the toxic chemistry, and the specialized human capital are the true battlegrounds. Until the West masters the midstream, they remain captured in the processing loop. Global supply chains will continue to fracture. The maps are being redrawn in real time, carving the world into adversarial blocks where resources are weaponized as instruments of state power. Trillions of dollars will be deployed, and entire industries will be restructured. But capital alone cannot solve a fundamental deficit in physical engineering and metallurgical expertise. As the geopolitical tectonic plates shift, the nations that control the refinement of critical minerals will dictate the trajectory of the 21st century. The rest will simply comply. The declassified truth is now on the table. The invisible rare earth war is not approaching. It has already been fought, and the West is currently losing the peace. The command center monitors flash red as the reality sets in. We must rebuild our industrial base from the ground up, or face a future of permanent strategic subservience. The choice is stark. Endure the immense economic pain of localized reconstruction, or accept the slow, comfortable decline of outsourcing our survival to a hostile strategic adversary. The timeline for action is 0. Every passing day solidifies the trace's only patent trap, wrapping the global economy tighter in an invisible, legally enforced metallurgical chokehold. To our viewers, understanding these invisible macro forces is critical to navigating the coming economic storm. The mainstream narrative focuses on the minds. We focus on the math. If you want to survive the sovereign pricing paradigm, you must understand the choke points. Subscribe to the network. Join the command center. Stay ahead of the geopolitical curve. As global markets brace for the impact of permanent structural inflation, we will continue to declassify the economic warfare shaping your reality. The free market is over. The rare earth gate is locked. The board is set. Prepare for the new industrial age. This concludes the intelligence briefing. Tactical command is now offline.